So moving on to a little bit of a different perspective, the institutional perspective now on tackling plastic pollution. In this panel, we will meet a city representative, NGO, and the government. Please welcome up on the stage Karolina Skog, who's Minister for the Environment in Sweden. Welcome. Ledin from the Department of the Environmental Administration at the City of Gothenburg. Welcome. And Håkan Wirtén, who is Secretary General, I need to see this to get it right, yes, of WWF Sweden. Welcome. So, institutional perspective, how can you actually support what we're talking about? Karolina, let me start by asking you, EU has put forward a plastic strategy, and I read in some article that you say it's a good first step.
It is. Firstly, that it is in place is a very good thing. And we share the knowledge base, how the problem is defined by the European Commission. And we're very happy about some of the ways forward that pointed out. They point at fishing gear, lost fishing gear as a problem. And we see a lot of lost fishing gears, for example, on the west coast of Sweden. They also point at single-use plastic, acknowledging that the use of them has to go down. And they point at microplastics. My worry is maybe the implementation tempo. From Sweden, we want the Commission to act quickly. And some of the roads ahead they're pointing out are quite slow.
How quick would you like to see the implementation?
As fast as possible. For example, in terms of drinking water, it should have been yesterday, obviously. So we think it's very important to act swiftly and to have regulation in place quickly so that all the action is, we see a lot of action in terms of plastic now, and it's very important that we get it right from the start so we don't have to come back and redo some of them. And one issue that we think is very important to get right from the start is the use of term biodegradable. We see on the market some products that are marketed as biodegradable, and it's a very tricky term, and it must be used right. To a consumer, we think that most consumers think that biodegradable means it's more or less like an apple. You can just toss it away, and that is not true. So it's very important that we regulate the use of the term biodegradable, so it's used correctly, so we don't get products on the market where it's used incorrectly and where consumers get something that is not what they think it is.
So that was EU. What's the Swedish government doing on the plastic issue?
We have a lot of work going on. Firstly, we have an SOU. I've hired a researcher to do a work on plastics, acknowledging that some of the issues are very, very complex, and it's very important to be knowledge-based and to get it right. So she's working now for 2 years, and I had the first report, and that touched, for example, on the biodegradability. We also do a lot of practical work. We support the municipalities here on the west coast that have a very heavy burden with plastics on their beaches. And we've also started looking at the how to reduce the single-use plastic. We do think it needs to come down. But we're also looking at a specific issue that are very urgent and are worrisome. It was mentioned here earlier. China has shut their borders from import of plastic waste. And we do not know today where the streams are going. And we are concerned that they might go to countries that cannot take care of it.
And what can you do about that? Because that was the point of the person asking the question.
I think there's two things that needs to be done. As countries, we are looking into the Basel Convention, which is regulating the trade of waste, to change that and to regulate plastic better. That would give countries information on where the plastic streams are going. But also, business must take the responsibility to be transparent. You know, it's just not good enough to take in plastic waste streams and export it to Asia and not knowing where it's ending up. They have to take the responsibility the whole way.
And how can you make them take this responsibility? Are you talking legislation or?
Yes, I think yes, indeed. But that legislation does take time, and this is urgent. So I'm appealing directly to businesses. You need to take responsibility today and to be transparent about what's happening to the waste streams all the way down. Because we cannot have a situation where we export plastics out of Europe and it's ending up in beaches in Philippines. We can't have it like that. That has to stop now. If it's happening, it has to stop now.
And those, yes. And those can be really big volumes also. We're here talking about plastic straws, but this can be really big volumes. Now, Håkan, I read a report a couple of weeks ago where you actually mentioned that if we don't do anything about, this was about the Mediterranean, in 2050 we could have more plastics than fish in the Mediterranean.
Yeah, terrible.
Terrible and really worrying.
It's really terrible. But don't get me wrong now, but the plastic pollution of the oceans can also be a gift.
A gift?
How can that be? Well, when industry and factories started out a long time ago, we saw the pollution of the factories, and we said we have to build higher chimneys. Higher chimneys, higher chimneys. And that's the way we have been treating the oceans. We have been overfishing. When that species is gone, try another one. And when all those are gone, go further out, go deeper, until it's almost empty, right? And I think this is, we have known for such a long time that the fish stock has been overfished. 90% is overfished to the limit. And we know about the acidification of the oceans, we know about the climate change, the coral reefs are bleaching and all that, but we have been sort of shouting into space, right? It's like, oh, it looks pretty good. The water looks blue and nice and everything. But now we have this. I'm a big football fan, and right now there is something going on in Russia, I heard, and suddenly there is this huge interest in the world about football, about soccer. And this is what we have with the plastic. There is so much energy, so much passion, because we see something is wrong with the ocean.
So you mean when it's visible for us, we can see the plastic, we know that the fish is actually eating the plastic and we're eating the fish. So
yeah.
it
seems
tangible.
Like that, and then you get the health issues and everything. It comes very close to yourself. And let's use that to turn around the whole situation about the oceans, which has been going on for a long, long time, to be honest.
So you're actually quite happy about the plastics showing up?
Of course I'm not.
Beaches.
I said that, don't get me wrong, because I think it's
but it can raise awareness.
It's absolutely terrible. But we haven't had the levers, we haven't had the buttons to push, really. But now we do, in this way. So let's use this terrible situation this is just the tip of an iceberg also. We just know little, and it's getting worse and worse. So let's use that also to address the whole situation and the picture of the oceans.
So do you agree with Dika Fari? She said that there's a growing sense of urgency, and it's a very good moment now to really get some things going here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I know you, Anna, in Gothenburg, you're doing quite a lot. You have a couple of quality objectives related to the sea, to the oceans as well?
Yes, we do. We have adopted our own local environmental quality objectives, and that's adopted from the Swedish environmental quality objectives, of course. And one is addressing the sea. It's talking about a sea in balance, and it's talking about the coastal areas and the archipelagos, which is very special here in Gothenburg, of course. Among these quality objectives, we have a sub-objective that's specifically addressing discharge of plastics to the sea. At the moment, we have a sub-objective saying that we should reduce the discharge of plastics from the city. However, this is not that easy, actually, because we are not sure about how much is actually transported. That's part of the trick. How do we actually measure how much is transported? We talk about waste from the city. We talk about single-use plastics that we throw away. It's raining and it's going into the sea. In this case, first into the river and then into the sea. We're talking about plastic bags. We can see them, visible, rather big ones. We also talk about the microplastics, which you can't see. We know that we both from traffic and, for instance, from the artificial lawns, we have a transport of microplastics. And we work on that at the moment to actually strengthen this sub-objective. It's up for a political decision, I hope, early this autumn. Although we have elections, I hope they will take that decision. And that says that we are going to reduce the discharge of plastics to the sea with 50%. And keep it low. As I said, we are not sure how big it is at the moment. So the question is if we have to find out how big it is at the moment or just decide that we have to reduce it all the way we can. And that's, I think, what we need to do, actually.
So you're about to change the wording to actually sharpen it a bit there.
Yes.
Now, what do all you say? You can use the regulation to push forward. You can use incentive carrots and sticks. Håkan, coming from an NGO, what would you say is the most effective way of changing behavior?
You mean consumers or companies or governments or
Open
all of
question,
us? Or?
You can choose. And
all right, I choose all.
Okay,
I
good.
choose all.
That was what I knew you would be doing.
So we need, I mean, from governments, we need really international, legally international agreements that really we come together on this. Together was the word, right? Coming together on international agreements that say that this is not to be at all. And that has, of course, like in other big international agreements, to be connected to the national work, the national goals, and it has to be near in the future. So in like 2030, it has to be all recycled and 100% recycled, and ban the single-use plastics.
Ban the single-use plastics.
So that's for the government.
100% recycled at the latest by 2030.
Yeah, sooner the better.
Binding agreements.
Yeah.
Karolina, is it time for a Paris Agreement?
Well, that was only
for
the governments,
oceans?
right?
That was only the governments. We'll come back to the rest of us. Karolina, what do you say? Do we need a Paris Agreement for the oceans?
Actually, already last year, the world came together to talk about how to save the oceans. Sweden and Fiji took an initiative and summoned the world. For the first time, the world met in New York and talked about how to save the ocean. And that conference has spurred a number of initiatives, nationally, but at least, and also globally and regionally. So there's a lot of action going on the work on oceans, and from different perspectives already happening. We're talking about acidification, plastic pollution, saving the coral reefs, but also things like ocean literacy. And I'm actually happy I have an announcement, because from the Swedish government, we are now, I can announce another 7.8 million euros going into 13 different global projects working on the implementation of SDG 14, the SDG on the ocean. And this is a follow-up on the last year's conference. And we are now financing a number of the initiatives that came out of that conference.
So, around 80 million Swedish for another ocean projects, couple of ocean
13, we selected 13 global projects by NGOs, UN agencies, and so forth. And the work is happening now.
So you mean you don't need a Paris Agreement for the oceans because it's already happening?
We don't need to sit down again and talk about what we should do. No, the time is to act. We know what to do in broad terms. Of course, we know we need science, but it's time to act, not to talk in meeting conferences.
Exactly what we're doing here, actually. So when we've talked here, we go out and make some action. Anna, what would you like to see from the national level to spur your work in Gothenburg on this issue?
Well, I think from the national level, I think it's very important, which has been mentioned several times here today, that's collaboration. We need to work on the same track. We need to have the same aims or goals and objectives. I think from the national point of view, of course, we are asking for legislation, but I also think that we need very much support when we are testing things. And I think what we can do in the city is actually to test. We can show it works. We don't have any single-use plastics here today, for instance. This event is environmental certified by actually my department here. And that's a way to working on this, to make sure that we show that it's possible to make the changes. And it doesn't cost too much. It's possible to do it. And I think that kind of support. And I think what we actually could do is we could be even better in showing what we are doing. What things are going on? For instance, in the city here, we are now looking quite a lot on the artificial lawns, that we know we have quite a lot of discharge of microplastics. We have it in the regular environmental inspections now as a new part to inspect how much is actually released from these lawns, but also to try new materials. So those departments in the city that are responsible for the artificial lawns, they are testing new materials to see if we can reduce these discharges of microplastics. I think some examples, and we could do much more on that. And I think we need the support from the national level to get it out and show the examples.
So
that would be
cities
great.
can be showcase and good examples of things.
Yeah.
Håkan, coming back to you now. What
Yeah.
else do you need and want?
Well, from business sector, I need some, and I want some, and I wish, and I desire bold decisions.
Don't you think they were bold enough, the business leaders here?
It can be much more.
Oh, they can be
much more bold and bolder and whatever. And because I think the market is ready. Time is right. People are. You can see it in market after market that people are asking for a way of helping the future of our children. And I think the companies that are the boldest, they are the winners. Someone said you have to find that sweet spot, but you have to really push that.
You have to push the sweet spot.
Oh, it's sweet back here, it's sweet over there. Being really bold and take those decisions that we are moving away from plastic, we are moving away, we are recycling. It's upstream. When it's in the ocean, it's already too late, right? So it's upstream at the source, as many have talked about and spoken about today.
So you want a bolder business, you want them to push the sweet spot even further?
Yeah, because consumers can only do so much. And the big producers have a big responsibility of helping the consumers upstream.
And the ban of plastic bags, Karolina, will that become a reality?
It might be, maybe on the European level. We have a single market, so it's always better to regulate markets on the European levels. And we are expecting the Commission to propose ban on some single-use plastic. But it's complex. We must remember that single-use plastic also is doing a lot of good, as in terms of food containing. It can be very efficient. So we must have a balance of acting swiftly and sturdily, but not being over enthusiastic and just tossing away plastic where it does good. But one thing that is, I think, the biggest hurdle when I see in the not short term but in the middle long term is chemicals in plastics, because that's a hurdle for recycling. Because we don't have any transfer of information on which chemicals are in different products, be it dangerous or not. If you buy a material for recycling, of course you want to know what is in it. And we don't have that system yet. So what I am working on, what I see a need for, is not a Paris deal on the ocean, but a Paris deal on chemicals.
A Paris Agreement on chemicals?
Yes. And we will launch in New York in July an alliance of countries that are coming together to create a Paris deal on chemicals. The global trade is global, And the work and the regulation of chemicals also needs to be global to make sure that recycling is safe.
So what you're actually saying here is that in July in New York, you're going to start this
Yes.
Paris Agreement for chemicals.
Yes, we're launching it.
You're just dropping news here every time I give you the word. That's interesting. Håkan, what do you say about that? Is it a good idea?
Yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, this is
Yes.
this is of course the unknown part of the plastics and everything. So of course, this is something that we must know much more about. We don't know enough. So of course, we have to have more knowledge and get into these activities that can change that. Of course.
Do you have questions for the panel? Yes. I think you have to keep it very close to the mouth.
Does it work now?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Christian Merup. I'm working for Blue Water, building up a venture trying to get rid of as many plastic bottles as possible. Usually, we tend to focus on solutions, but I'm actually going to ask a question about the problem. Because when I started this journey, I have learned a lot on what happens with plastic bottles that comes out in the oceans, how it blends with the water, how that destroys our animals and our humans as well. So my question is, if we don't make any bold decisions now, how bad can this be in 20, 30, 50 years? What's going to happen?
So if we just don't do anything, Håkan, how bad will it be? You said that in 2050 we will have more plastics than fish in the Mediterranean Ocean.
Yeah, that's what we hear from science, that this is the prognosis that we can foresee. So that is really, really, really bad. So I mean, we cannot go there. We have billions of people are living next to the oceans. Billions of people are dependent on food and proteins from the oceans. So we just cannot go there.
Karolina, how bad can it be?
It's actually very hard to imagine how bad it actually can be. The amount of plastic use is more and more for every day. As the economy is, which is a good thing, of course. The economy is getting better worldwide, and the amount of chemicals used and put into plastics is new every day. And this is very hard to imagine how this will interact with the other problems related to the seas. The seas are stressed by overfishing, is stressed by chemicals, is stressed by climate change, and then also plastic pollution is added a further pressure. And how this will interact, I try not spending so much time thinking about that, becoming depressed. But it's very important that we have to act now. We have no time to wait. That's for sure.
So you agree on this one, Håkan?
I just wanted to add one thing before the end of this, and that's we've just turned the tide, so it seems, on the big whales and of the oceans, getting away from hunting and so on. And now we're feeding them plastics. And I'm really scared what's going to happen to these fantastic creatures. And I'm getting back to us as human beings, as consumers, because sometime I heard about one of these boats, the crew that said, they came to the conclusion that every decision that we take, is it going to make the boat go faster? Is it going to make the boat go faster? And I think that is a question to all of us. Am I making this world better? Am I making it more sustainable or not? That's a question to all of us all the time. Does it make the boat go faster? Does it make the world more sustainable?
I have 2 kids. They post this question every day. Every time I go shop with my kids, they say no plastic bags. I can never take any plastic bags. And then I said to them, we were talking about climate footprints. I said to them, well, this trip we're doing to the Canary Islands, a lot of footprints compared to the plastic bags. And my 11-year-old son said, well, Mom, you need to say no to a lot of plastic bags then.
Yes.
Because they wanted to do the trip. So, but the thinking is going on. We have another question here. You have a mic already.
Keith Freegard from Action Polymers in the UK. I think what we're seeing today is a recognition that the growth of plastics and the dealing of plastics in our waste system in the developed world has got a bit of a big market failure. But we're clever enough, rich enough and responsible enough to do something about that. My question concerns the developing world where the big population growth is going on, because those population growths are seen as target markets for sellers of fast-moving consumer goods and plastic products. So how do we prevent a duplication of the market failure we've created in Europe by doing exactly the same in the growth countries of the world, where if we don't do it right, correct product design, integrated waste management system, only putting products on the market where there's true responsibility, if we don't repeat that there, we'll just create another huge market failure in those growth countries. How can we change that?
So this little small question to end this panel, Karolina.
I think we need to do two things. We need to regulate markets here to make sure that products that are put into market are safe, they are reusable, recyclable, and setting the standards for markets here, because standards are set when markets are strong. That's one thing. And the other thing is, of course, using aid to develop a safe waste management in the developing world. We have a lot of knowledge, we have a lot of good technology in place, and we need to make that transfer of knowledge and technology fast.
And the companies as front runners also. Sorry.
Anna.
Yeah. But I also think it's important, once again, that we also show that it's possible with alternatives. And alternatives doesn't reduce the standards. They can actually be much better. And I think we have those examples, and I think we continue to develop those examples, where we can show we can do it in this way, and your life will be as good as if you do it this way. I think that is something we actually can do.
So finally, how would you label yourself? We were talking about optimists, pessimists, worried optimists. Karolina, what are you?
I think I'm on the same level as Jan. I'm a worried optimist.
Worried optimist. Anna.
I'm always an optimist. Always.
And Håkan.
Yeah, that's the only way I can think. Optimistic, but I'm worried.
So kind of worried optimism here. Minister Karolina Skog, Anna Ledin, Håkan Wirtén, thank you very much for coming here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.